Summarize categorical data. In this video, you will need colored pencils or highlighters or markers, something with color, so please make sure you have at least 3 or 4 of those. Categorical data is data that can be divided into categories based on the attributes of the data. You can summarize categorical data using the mode. The table shows the number of students that play each instrument. Summarize the data using the mode. As we look at the table, we see there are 6 instruments and there are several students that play each instrument. But I noticed that one stands out in particular as the most. And remember, mode means most. So if I look at drums, 16 students say they play the drums. That's more than any other instrument. That means more students play the drums than any other instrument. So drums is the mode. The number of students that chose drums is twice that of the next popular instrument, the violin. This is what we mean when we say summarize the data using the mode. Represent the data in a bar graph. Summarize and describe the data distribution. Well, this says a bar graph, not a histogram, so that means that our bars can be separated from one another. There can be spaces in between. The first thing we need to do is we need to label the axes of our bar graph. Now we already have a title, number of students per instrument. We have number of students on the left and then instruments on the bottom. We just need to put the actual instruments and then number the side. So let's start here with the numbers. We'll put a 0 here. And then we'll count by 2s at each line. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and the top line will represent 18. Now on the bottom, we need to go ahead and put the names of each of the instruments. So go ahead and take a second to do that. There are 6 instruments in the table, so make sure you have 6 instruments labeled on your bar graph. Now you guys know how to make a bar graph, so I'm actually going to ask you to draw the bars on your own. And remember, this is not a histogram, so the bars do not have to be touching each other. Go ahead and press pause to draw your bars and then press play to check. This is how your bar graph should look. We can't forget the second part of the problem, which is summarize and describe the data distribution. So we're going to look at our bars, and we see that the bar for the drums is the tallest. So it is the mode. And then any other observations we make, we can write down. For example, I noticed that the same number of students play the bass and the clarinet because those bars are the same height. You can summarize categorical data using something called a relative frequency table. Relative frequency is the ratio of the number of times a category is represented to the total number of pieces of data. Now remember, we can write a ratio as a fraction. So let's just kind of look and see how that would look. So on the top, we would have the number of items in that category. Let's just say number in category. And then the bottom of our ratio would be the total data. Okay, so a relative frequency table shows the percent of values in each category. This table shows the number of students that have visited various states. Determine the relative frequency for each state. Summarize and describe the data using the relative frequency. First thing we need to figure out is what the total number of students that were surveyed is. And in order to do that, we're going to add all of them up. So we're going to do 12 plus 15 plus 3 plus 7 plus 3. So when we add those up on the right, I get 20. Carry my 2. 2 plus 1 is 4, so 40. So the total number of students surveyed is 40. And what we're going to do for each category is we're going to write that ratio, the number in the category over the total. So for Florida, we're going to have 15 over 40. For Georgia, we're going to have 3 over 40. And then for Maine, we're going to have 7 over 40. Now you need to go ahead and do the division problems to get your decimals. So pause the video, do your division problems to find your decimals, and once you're confident in your answer, press play to check. When I divided 15 divided by 40, I got 0.375, but that's not a percent. We need to convert that decimal to a percent. And you may recall that to do that, we take the decimal and we move it to the right 2 times. So 0.375 is 37.5%. And so that's what we'll write in the table for the relative frequency of Florida. When I divided 3 divided by 40, I got 0.075. To convert that to a percent, we need to move it 2 to the right. So that is 7.5%. Now for Georgia, we're going to put 7.5% for the relative frequency. We can also do the same for North Carolina because they had the same number of students that visited. And then the last one was 7 divided by 40, and when I worked that out, I got 0.175. So I'm going to have to move that decimal to the right 2 times to get my percent, and that is 17.5%. So that is the relative frequency for Maine. Now we need to summarize and describe the data using the relative frequency. So we're just going to basically explain what it means. Most students have visited Florida, and then California, and then, what else? Maine. Oh, you can't see that at all. More than 1/3 of the students have visited Florida. Another way to summarize categorical data is a percent bar graph. A percent bar graph shows the relative frequency of each category in a single bar. So here, this is why I said you needed to have something with colors, because I'm not sure this showed up very well on your notes. So make sure that you have split your percent bar graph into the different colors with either some colored pencils or markers or highlighters. They don't have to be the same colors as mine, but just make sure that you've split up your percent bar graph with colors. And you'll need to do the same thing on this problem. If you cannot see the difference in your percent bar graphs, you may want to just draw a line with a pen so you can see where the male and females begin and end, or you can use your colors. But let's try this problem together. The percent bar graph shows the percent of each grade level that is male or female. Summarize and describe the data shown in the graph. So we can look and we can say, okay, well, there are more blank in 6th and 7th. Let's look at 6th and 7th grade. If I look in 6th grade, the bottom portion or the red portion of the percent bar graph is much larger than the top portion or the blue portion. And so that means there are more females, or no, more males. The bottom is males. The red is males. Okay, so there are more males in 6th and 7th grade than females. And then I noticed that the number of males and females in 8th grade is about the same. So mostly you're just writing down your observations about the percent bar graph. What do you see? What does it mean? For number 5, again, you're going to need to use markers or highlighters or colored pencils to do the colors on your percent bar graph so you can see where one set of data begins and one ends. And I would like for you guys to do this one on your own. Remember, you're going to just look at your percent bar graph and write down what you notice. What category had the most? What had the least? What's the mode? So write down your observations, say what they mean, and we'll discuss in class tomorrow.